There's a lot of car news out there we need to get to. And I also just got back from the Cayman Islands. As usual, when I go on vacation, I like to recap those. What car did I rent? What was the area like? Was it expensive? What did we like? What did we not like? Observations and a lot of the little differences. So you're going to want to stick around for that because it's excellent. Do the tariffs affect this? You know, it's not political, but everything affects everything that we do, especially with cars and food. This is going to be a great episode. Buckle up and let's go. This is Hard Parking, brought to you by RAI Honda and RAI Toyota out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm your host, Jhae Pfenning, recording from my home studio, like legit video recording from my home studio in Gilbert, Arizona. I want to kind of talk about the last couple of guests that I had. Going back 2 episodes ago, Nick Keck, who sat here in front of me in my studio, and he was very open and honest about some of the things that he's been going to. And to put yourself in that situation, the amount of, I would say, courage it takes to tell your story so that other people out there who can identify with it or may have friends that are in dark places, they can hear that or they can see that if you're watching it. You know, that's so powerful. And it's a very vulnerable thing. And like I told him, I don't know, like I go through my own mental struggles all the time. And I don't know if I could have the power to go to my physician and say, hey, I'm in a really bad spot, doc. I really need some help. I don't know. That's not the first time we've had people on here like that. And I used to have a series on here called, mental health, check in with your friends. And that was kind of that thing. And so one of the reasons why I do this is it kind of offers that therapy, not only to myself, but also to my guests. And I'm not a therapist. And like we joked, we're not doctors, we're not lawyers, we're not attorneys, we're not scientists. When you have independent thought, sometimes people will label you as being as such or not being. Like you're not qualified to talk about mental health because you're not a mental health professional. And it's a very slippery slope. But sometimes just talking about it, sometimes just getting it out helps and lets you know that you're not alone. But it's a scary thing because you don't want people that you tell this to look at you differently. You just want them to know so that somebody else knows. And that's a lot to put on somebody as well, as a listener, as a peer. But if you haven't heard that or watched that episode, I encourage you to go back. It's episode 264, 2 episodes prior. Now, the most previous episode was with Jordan Sawaka, and hopefully you watched or saw that as well. Again, that's episode 265. He's an incredible person. And I'd seen him out and about at different car events. Great person to talk to, and we finally made it happen with me packing up and going to his shop. And I'm going to try to do a lot more of that this year. That's my commitment to you, the viewer, to you, the listener of the show, is to take the show on the road. Prior to 2025, the only time you'd really see the show on the road is when I would go to car events, set up the hard parking tent, the pop-up, the 10-foot, and record audio, but never really video. Because it's a lot. It's actually a lot to be a one-man show and take all the lights, the camera, the action. No, but seriously, it's a lot to take the cameras, take the lights, to take the nice microphones. And so I've kind of been experimenting with things that I can take out and about. And then when you set up for a show, you have the tent and you have all that stuff. You got to make sure the audio is correct because the difficult part about recording at a car event is there's just so much noise. If it's a good car event, there's going to be DJs playing. There's going to be announcements made all the time. You're going to hear cars whipping around in the background. And you can't really get a really good audible setup when you're at a track. It happens. I mean, we've all seen videos where they may be broadcasting from live from the video. But there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a lot for one person, but that's my commitment because I had a lot of fun with both of those. Of course, in the case of one, Nick was sitting right in front of me, and the other one, went to Jordan's warehouse. And if you haven't checked that episode, I encourage you, just like I said the last time, to go and watch the last 20, 30 minutes of it. If you listen to the audio, go watch him kind of go through the cars. It's an amazing. You get to kind of see, put a face to the voice. And he's just an amazing person, and we're probably going to do it quite a few times because he said he had a lot of fun. But without further ado, let's get into some car news. So toward the end of February, there was reports showing up that somebody had donated a fleet of 10 Cybertrucks to the Las Vegas Police Department. Ben Horowitz is the man behind the donation. He's known for donating a lot to the Las Vegas Police Department. Says here on this TechCrunch article that he's reported at least 7 million over the last couple of years. First off, and I've said this before, so it's not breaking news, but I don't dislike the Cybertruck. I think it's interesting looking. I don't personally want one. It's not really a traditional truck, but how many people use their pickup trucks as really pickup trucks other than just city status vehicles? Trucks always lead every year. The number one sold vehicle are always trucks, whether it's the Ford F-150, the Dodge Ram, some other truck, GMC, you name it. You can look it up. Top 10 vehicles, it's always trucks. Like 3 out of the top 5 are always pickup trucks. That we could argue with over 1 million sales, they're not out there working the fields, okay? They're not working construction. They're just pickup trucks that people own. I kind of wish I had a pickup truck. But one of the first things I have to ask myself with this gift of 10 Cybertrucks to Las Vegas is, number one, why? And in reading articles online, they're talking about turning them into SWAT vehicles. And so they're not getting them all at once, but as SWAT vehicles, you have to ask yourself, when did Las Vegas turn into RoboCop's Detroit? Hopefully you've seen RoboCop. There's a lot of crazy stuff. So crazy where they had to turn a guy that was presumed dead into an android so he can go around and pull a gun out of his quadriceps and blast fools because the police were getting shot up and it's corrupt. 1980s. Great movie, by the way. I need to watch it again. But when did Las Vegas turn into RoboCop's Detroit? Okay, you can make this Cybertruck bulletproof. They argue that it is already bulletproof to some degree. But now they have this special armored package that you've probably seen on the news. You've seen people crying about it and whatnot. Aren't SWAT trucks already bulletproof? And they can get everything from an AR-15 up to a 50 caliber round, depending on obviously the proximity and what all is going on. Okay, so you're taking this big truck that you already have, which is pretty badass. I don't think there's anyone out there that hasn't looked at a SWAT truck when you see it and the back door is open and they're doing their drills. And you're like, man, that is a cool looking truck. Like that is a badass looking truck. You see the SWAT truck coming around, you go, oh, what's going on? You follow it down the neighborhood, want to see the action. So a SWAT truck is bulletproof already. And it also carries, depending on the make and model, 8 to 12 people. So now you have the entire SWAT team in one SWAT truck. The Cybertruck carries 5 adults. That's what it says online, 5 adults, because at the end of the day, it's still a pickup truck with a funky looking bed. So what are we doing? I think they're going to look really cool, that's for sure, because they look like they're from a futuristic movie. And I'm all about futuristic movies because I am a sci-fi nerd. But 10 Cybertrucks, Las Vegas Police Department, what are we doing? According to sources online, Honda has decided to produce its next generation of Honda Civics in Indiana, moving it up from Mexico because of the tariffs. What's good about this is it just brings a lot more jobs to the United States. I had a back and forth with somebody on Twitter X about this. One guy says the Honda Civic has been popular in the United States since the first Fast and Furious movie. Don't think anyone here actually gives a bleep, a nothing burger, he says, of this move. So all it takes is a half a second of research. I said, actually, the F-150 and other trucks are always top 2 or 3, like I just said in the last segment. For normal passenger vehicles, the Civic remained the best-selling compact car in 2024, up 21% from 2023. So yes, I think a lot of people do give a fuck. And there's going to be a lot of jobs. In 2013, I went to Columbus, and we went to the Acura plant out there in Marysville. I think I'm saying it right, Marysville, Ohio. And that thing's big. And that's the number one volume producer of Honda and Acura vehicles outside of Japan. So it is a big deal. At least it was at the time, the number one producer outside of Japan. And I think bigger than anything they do in Mexico. So more jobs for more people in Indiana. About a month or two ago, we talked about how Nissan and Honda were talking about merging. At some point last month, in early February, the conversations kind of fell apart. And now it looks like Nissan might not even survive. According to, and I may say this wrong, Nikkei Asia website, Nissan Community Review leadership after failed Honda merger talks. And according to Car Scoops, the Nissan CEO admits the brand may not even survive without outside investment. So just like I said before, maybe Honda and Nissan weren't going to actually merge. Maybe Honda buys a majority stake in the company. I could see that. But either way, it looks like Nissan needs that outside investor. So who's going to step up? It's going to be Ford. Ford always buys everything. And I don't have anything to indicate that it would be Ford, but since they have their hands in everything, it's got to be Ford. but we'll continue to watch that story. And of course, since I originally recorded that segment, so this is now a day later with the same shirt on because I like consistency, it is now being reported that the merger might be back on because the Nissan CEO is most likely going to step down any day now, maybe any minute now. Hell, by the time this comes out, it may have already happened. The Robotics and AI Institute, also known as RAI Institute, has released a couple videos, most recently, youtube.com, RAI-IN, just look up RAI Institute, RAI Institute, stunting with reinforcement learning. There's a robot, they do robotics and AI. So there's a robot driving around on a bicycle. It looks like a bicycle for maybe a 5-year-old. So it's a really small bike. And this robot is attached to it. It's a self-leveling robot. So this thing drives around. It can stop on a dime. It can back up. It can go forward. It could jump. There's a really cool video of it kind of going around the room, a bunch of people behind the glass watching it. And it jumps up on what looks to be a ping pong table and then jumps off the ping pong table. All of this without falling over. I think someone's maybe controlling it. It is a robotics AI institute, so it could be artificial intelligence kind of scanning the ground. But I also think somebody could be controlling it. But either way, at the end of the video, it's kind of playing with a dog. So the dog has a toy, like a little ball. It's kind of playing with the dog, and the dog's barking at it. Weirdly enough, this page has less than 2,000 subscribers, and they have only 3 videos. You would think they would have 7 million views on this video, and God knows how many subscribers. There's also another video of a dog, a robotic dog, running on a track. And finally, a little bit of robots in my area. I was driving to the store around Mother's Day, and I noticed a red food delivery robot. It had eyes on it like a toy. This one had a person behind it on a bicycle in all sorts of bright yellow gear. And either this person was chaperoning the robot or controlling the robot. Apparently, according to Reddit, this has been happening in my area for like the last 6 or 7 months. It looks pretty cool, but this is the future. Freeberg on the All In podcast said last month that right now China has a food delivery service that's about, what do you say? I want to say he said something like $1 billion a year in China, just delivering food. So it looks like we are a lot further behind because wherever you live, if you're listening in the United States or watching this, you probably have not seen what I have seen here in Phoenix. So let me know if you have. Have you seen any food delivery robots in your area? And this is the car news. You know, before I get to this main part of this episode where I talk about my awesome vacation, and you're going to sit here and you're going to watch it, you're going to listen to it, I'm going to add some visuals for those of you actually watching this. I have a note here about a friend of mine that I was going to go off on. So I still have to go off on this person because there's a saying from the movie Snatch: if I give a dog a bone, I don't need to know if it tastes good or not. So think about that. If I give a dog a bone, I don't need to know if it tastes good or not. So a friend of mine hit me up, said he's looking for a car. Now, we used to own the same type of car, the NSX. I'm not going to call him out by name out of respect. I go, okay, well, what are you looking for? Because he wants a newer NSX. But first off, when he hits me up and says, hey, I'm looking for this car, I'm thinking, okay, maybe he is just too busy. We have access to the same resources. I may be the president of the club, but that doesn't mean I have some sort of a secret list, some sort of a blacklist, black book of NSXs for sale. So I go, okay, well, have you tried this one or this one? He goes, yeah, I like that one, but it doesn't have this. Or this one costs more. I don't like the color of the interior. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I reach out to somebody another person in the community who seems to always find every single one of these cars is for sale. And I said, hey, I got a buddy who's looking for a car between this amount of money and this amount of money. Let me know if you find something. Seconds later, another guy slides into my DM and goes, hey, I got this car for sale. I go, oh yeah, I forgot. Like, we have a very small community. Right? Everybody knows each other. He goes, hey, I got my car for sale. I go, oh yeah, I forgot your car's for sale. So I send this to my original friend who asked. We'll call the original friend Timothy. So I send this to Timothy and I say, hey, Timothy, here's a guy who's selling a car. Here's his information. Well, how much does he want for it? I go, I don't know. Here is the guy. You guys connect. You guys figure it out. I'm out of this. So he hits me up later and he goes, hey, I think I like his car. Do you know of a transporter? Do you know anybody who's transporting cars? I go, well, no. I've never transported a car before, but I know that Reliable is really good. That's who Barrett Jackson uses. I have another friend who says that he uses Reliable for all his cars. He's in the industry, moves a lot of cars a lot of time. I go, so why don't you call Reliable or ask the seller if he knows somebody or go to Google and look. He goes, okay, cool. A couple of days later, hey, I can't find anybody to transport the car, or it costs this amount of money. Do you know of anybody else? I said, okay. Well, let me ask another friend of mine. So I reach out to another friend of mine in the same community. And I go, hey, you transport cars. You have your cars transported all the time between where you live in Utah and here in Arizona, maybe California. Do you have any buddies in the system? Do you have a favorite company? So he sends me a couple of guys. He goes, yeah, this is so-and-so with transport. This is so-and-so with transport. These are the guys that I use. I go, well, where's one guy located? He goes, Idaho. I go, perfect. Because I think the car is in Idaho and it's going to California. So I send this to Timothy and I say, hey, Timothy, here's 2 transporters that came from a very good source who moves cars all the time. Timothy goes, okay, thanks. Do you know if they own the company or if they're just drivers? I go, I don't know, man. Why don't you reach out to them and ask them? Because here's the thing. I don't fucking transport cars. I never transport cars. It's not my job. But if I give you this information, follow up on it. And I tell them, I go, look, man. And I send him this heated voice message. I like sending voice messages instead of text messaging. I go, look, man, call them and find out. If I give a dog a bone, I don't need to know if it tastes good or not. And if they're not what you want, then go to Google and search for transporters. And it's going to go to a broker, a transportation broker, and you're going to get 500 calls from 500 different people all wanting to transport your vehicle. Okay, man. Cool. Long story short, he ends up buying the car, shows it to me. He goes, hey, what's your wheel size and your wheel spec? I really like them. I'm just like, dude, here's my wheel size. Here's the offset. Here's the wheels that I use. But if I give a dog a bone, I don't need to know if it tastes good or not. So therefore, what that means is I've given you this information. If it's good information, if it doesn't work out to you, not my problem. Go look it up or find another resolution. I don't have all the answers. I'm just somebody like you. Unlike you, I'm not lazy and I'm not going to just not look it up. So look it up and let me know how it works out. Now that I got that out of the way, before I get to my vacation stuff, Nick, who was the guest a couple episodes ago, pointed out to me that in a lot of my episodes, I mentioned streetcar takeover as the people who like to go and they do donuts in the middle of the intersection. And you see all these viral videos of them wrecking all over the place. He goes, Jhae, I want you to know that streetcar takeover is actually a sanctioned event. It's not these people. So every time you mention streetcar takeover, I cringe a little because it feels like you're talking about these people that it's not. You're talking about all these losers out there on the street. I go, okay. So I want to address that. No shade to the actual streetcar takeover, which is an actual thing on Instagram. Still shade to the people who get out there and they do donuts and they wreck and people die and people get hit with cars and they're just very disruptive. Like, screw those people. But those people aren't technically the brand that is known as streetcar takeover, where they do sanctioned events at specific areas that have plenty of security, fire, ambulance, police at racetracks around the United States. So apologize to them for that. So let's talk about my trip to the Cayman Islands. Notice I said Cayman instead of Cayman. We've always say Cayman, like the Cayman alligator, but it's actually Cayman. My wife and I realized that while we were there because we turned on the radio station and they always said Cayman. She says she overheard some lady saying that she gets annoyed that people say Cayman instead of Cayman. I go, well, it's obviously both, but officially it must be Cayman. So went to Grand Cayman, and here's what we discovered. First off, when we got out the airport, we walked over to the rental car center, and this place drives on the left side of the road, which is interesting because it's on the west side of the world. You know, we have the West with obviously USA, Canada, Mexico, South America, all that kind of stuff. So they drive on the left side of the road. So we go inside and we get our car, which is really weird. We get stuck with this Kia Soul. It didn't have CarPlay. You guys know how I am. No CarPlay, no Jhae. So that really sucked. But over there on the roads, the observation is they don't have a lot of traffic lights on this island. And it's broken down by the West End, the East End, the North Shore or North Point. But there's not a lot of traffic lights. There are some, but you don't have four-way stops. You have roundabouts. There's roundabouts everywhere. And it's pretty crazy trying to figure out that system at first. Because when you come up to a roundabout, it doesn't say yield. Here in America, everything says yield for traffic. We all know what that means. It means kind of look before you go. We do have roundabouts here in Arizona. Not very many, but we do have them. So I kind of have some roundabout training. We also had roundabouts when I went to Barcelona and when we went to Portugal. So you're kind of used to them. But Barcelona and Portugal, you still drive on the right-hand side of the road, not the left-hand side of the road. But one of the really interesting things is the cars were maybe 50-50. So half the cars, you were on the right side of the car, half the car, you're on the left side of the car, like in U.S. But you always drove on the left side of the road. And I wonder, like, we could never get away with that here in the United States, ever. This is why we always drive on the left-hand side of the car on the right side of the road. And again, over there, they still drive on the left side of the road. But when you look up and you look at all the cars, like in these traffic videos that I'm posting, it's 50-50, 55-45, 60-40 at best of cars where you're on the right side or the left side of the car. As far as vehicles go, they have everything. There's not a lot of big trucks. Like here, when I think of a big truck, I think of like a cement mixer here in the United States. You get the big cement mixer, the big dump trucks, the big work trucks. You have the big trash trucks that come up and down the alleys or up and down the streets with the little claw that comes out and grabs your trash bin and puts it in the back. They have them, but they don't have very many. But what they do have is the equivalent of like the Japanese K trucks, the K cars. I have a K car myself. They look just like a K car, like a K truck, but they're about the size of a full-size single cab pickup. And it's really funny looking. A lot of them are dualies on the back. So it looks like a little truck, but when you get up on it, it's about the size of a full-size, like I said, a full-size regular work truck. So we're not talking like a king cab or a queen cab, just a full-size truck, except for it's just a little squishy thing. So imagine a dump truck that size, a dump truck the size of a regular non-lifted pickup truck. And it's very utilitarian. Everything over there, all those trucks. So they have all these little work trucks going all over the place. These little flatbeds all over the place. And they're smaller than you're ever used to normally seeing, but they're not tiny like the K trucks. They don't have a real freeway system. They have a highway system. I think the average top speed when you're all in is like 60 miles an hour, which is another thing. They don't go by kilometers per hour. They go for miles per hour, which is what I'm used to, but it's still kind of weird a little bit. As far as the cars, and we're going to get in the food, we're going to get in the excursions, but just this is the non-automotive automotive podcast. We're going to talk about the cars first. They have this thing over there, and I'm looking at my notes in front of me called a Changan or Changan, Changan, and it looks like an Acura emblem upside down. And I don't think I've seen that before when I was in Europe last year. It was new to me, and it looks like they're kind of a luxury brand because I saw an SUV about the size of an Acura RDX, but I also saw a few passenger vehicles, but it's called a Changan. It looks like an Acura. It's kind of cool. I saw a legit DC2 Integra Type R sitting in someone's front yard when I was driving across the island. You don't see that in the United States because those cars get stolen all the time. But being a car guy, being a Honda guy, being an Acura guy, you notice those cars. Like my wife has no idea. I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, that is a legit championship white DC2 JDM Integra Type R. It doesn't have those lights like we have in the States, the circle lights. It's got the JDM bars. But it looked kind of cool just sitting out there in front of somebody's yard. I saw a lot of Hondas, a lot of DC2s, a lot of clapped out, beat up ones. Every once in a while you saw a modified car. I'm pretty sure I saw an Accord SIR or Accord Type R, I think, on the side of the road. I put a note here to verify if that's even a thing because I couldn't remember. I go, is that an Accord SIR? I think that's a thing. Is it a thing? Tell me in the comments if you're watching this online. Is it a thing? But I know there's an Accord Type R, again, from Gran Turismo. Every once in a while, you did see like a full-size semi, and it was awkward to see because you're not used to seeing it. Here in the States, you see them everywhere. But it was a full-size semi, but instead of the big payload in the back, it was construction, clearly construction. But the roads are kind of small. They're not Europe small. Most of the main roads are 2 and 2, but the turning lane in the middle, which took some getting used to as well. I did see some American cars there. Let's see. We saw a handful of Tahoes. When you see a Tahoe on Grand Cayman, it's kind of like seeing a Hummer H1 in the United States. It's just a bigger vehicle than you would normally see. And when it comes to parking at the hotel, it was just a bigger vehicle. And granted, I have a Kia Soul as my rental, so that's a normal vehicle that you see here in the United States quite often. But there, the Kia Soul was kind of big. They had a few Camaros. I saw a handful of Camaros. No ZL1s or SSs, but you still saw the Camaros, which again are bigger cars over there. The ZR, is it the ZR2 truck? The Chevy? Wes, you would know. It's kind of the sportier Chevy truck, ZR2. I saw a couple R8s, Audi R8s, which are kind of cool. One on the road, a black one on the road, and one backed up to someone's house when we were driving to the east side of the island. The east side of the island's got a lot of money. The west side's got some too, but the west side's where the airport is and most of the shopping and most of the tourism. But the east side, there's some mansions. There's some nice houses there. Saw some GTRs. And I did see a Lotus Emira, which is kind of cool. And of course, every cool car I see, I think to myself, how did they get them there on this small island? It must cost a fortune to get them there. This island doesn't seem to care if you're right-hand drive or left-hand drive, which that must be nice. So what does it take to get your vehicle on the Grand Cayman? Is there any NSXs on Grand Cayman? I doubt it. There could be some first-gen NSXs. There could be a second-gen. I didn't see a lot of Acuras there. A lot of times when I would see what I would think would be an Acura TSX, it's actually a Honda Accord. But I did see a couple TSXs, which is weird. So for every 20 Honda Accords that look like an American TSX, 3 of them might have actually been an Acura TSX. So there are some Acuras there. I saw an RDX. I saw a couple MDXs. Late model MDXs, like the ones that we have, or the one that we have out back. I would say of all the vehicles there, one of the funniest things were all the Toyota Voxy vans, the kind of SUV vans, VOXY. And they were used for transportation a lot from the airport. And they were used for buses. They called them buses, public bus. But these things weren't fitting more than like 8 to 10 people on them. So that's a really small public bus. A lot of them had fender flares, believe it or not. And little kicked out wheels like you'd see on like an Acti or any K vehicle here in the United States. So it's kind of cool. I saw this one, a Mystery Machine, walked up on it and recorded it. It was broken down at the time that I took this video, but the Mystery Machine was pretty cool. So you could tell that they still had some pride in some of their vehicles. A lot of mobile detailing units, some of them Voxies. I would say that the official vehicle of Grand Cayman is the Honda Fit. There were Fits everywhere. Everyone had a Fit. You see what I did there? But no, there were Honda Fits everywhere. But all different years, generations, like they were everywhere. And you kind of understood being a smaller island and you go to the public beach and all these cars are parked and there's not a lot of real estate to park your car. There were obviously other things besides Honda Fits. They had a lot of little miscellaneous Toyotas. There were a handful of Subarus. There were some car manufacturers that I didn't recognize. A lot of really tiny cars. Not K-class tiny cars, but really small cars. Not quite Euro either, because Euro it's like the smallest small of the small, right? I've never been to Japan, of course. I would imagine they have a lot of tiny cars too. But it was pretty crazy to see so many Honda Fits and so many tiny cars everywhere, as well as mixed in with big cars, as well as having right-hand drive and left-hand drive vehicles. At the end of the day, I think the Kia Soul that we had as a rental was perfect, except for, again, it had no CarPlay. Because it had no CarPlay, it also had no rear view camera, like backup camera. Imagine that, dealing with that for a week, because we were there for about 5-6 nights. We were there for a week, and a small place that you're not used to going, another country, and you have to actually back up old school way. Some of you watching this, some of you listening to this have no idea what that's like. But there was a time where every vehicle did not have a reverse camera. And this was the time. So that's about it for the car segment. We're going to get into the excursions and the food next. I'd say one of the funny things about going to Cayman is when you start looking at their excursions on V8 and what's the other one? TripAdvisor. Yeah. So V8 and TripAdvisor, they have like 4 or 5 different things that they do there. You can rent a jet ski, but there's no jet ski excursion. And the price to rent a jet ski is astronomical compared to anywhere else we've been in the Caribbean. So what they have is almost every tourist company has a Stingray Adventure, Starfish Adventure, Snorkel Adventure. They're all very expensive. Some of them want you to book like a private boat, which is super expensive. All of this is in Cayman dollars. I'm going to break that down in the end of what that actually means, but just know it's very expensive. They have a bioluminescence bay you can go to, which we didn't. They have these caves. It's the stalactites, stalagmites. Apparently, it's one of the best things to see in all the world. We didn't go to that after reading a bunch of reviews and finding out it's actually kind of a small area. It's kind of expensive for what you get, too. It's like $180 each person to go to this excursion when at the end of the day, it's just this small cave, apparently. Again, according to all the reviews, it's important to decide what you want to put your money on. What we ended up doing is the first day we were there. So we get there in the morning, we chill, but like the next morning we do an excursion, and we'd actually planned for it to be later in the afternoon, but they called and said, hey, your boat isn't filled up yet, so we're going to move you guys into the morning. So we ended up getting picked up at like 8:30 in the morning at the hotel. But we ended up doing the stingray, starfish, and snorkel excursion, and I think we paid $80 a piece, which isn't much. A lot of them were like 100 and 120. They have this thing called Starfish Point. And on Starfish Point, maybe it's Starfish City. No, I think it's Starfish Point. You take a boat out there, you get out of the boat, and it's a beautiful, weirdly, the waters are pretty calm for being out in the middle of the ocean. And there's starfish everywhere. And so we did that. And then after that, we got back on the boat and we went to another part of the area. First off, the water is very safe. They have sharks, but apparently there's never been a fatality in Cayman Islands, which is cool. So you get a little more confidence out there in the water. So we go out there and it's in the middle, I would say the middle of the ocean, but realistically the middle of the ocean is Hawaii. So you're not in the middle of the ocean, but you're miles offshore. You can't really see land. Well, I guess you could, but it's far away. So you're not in a bay, let's put it that way. And all these boats are there and they back you up and you get off. And there's this huge sandbar. It's probably, I don't know, 4.5, almost 5 feet deep. And there's stingrays everywhere. And there's probably 7 or 8 tourist boats out there, whether they're private or big groups like ours. There's a bunch of tourist guides out there. And there was probably, I estimated maybe 55 or 60 stingrays. And what we found is that the really big stingrays are the women and the smaller ones are the males. Females and males, not women, sorry. The smaller ones are the males. But what our tour guide did they would grab them and hold them, and you could hold the stingray, but you had to kiss the stingray. We didn't hold or kiss a stingray because that's freaking disgusting. Some people did. But you also had the opportunity to feed the stingray. And so I said, all right, I'm going to feed the stingray. And what they do is they tell you to take your hand like this. And if you're watching this on video, you'll see you have to tuck your thumb and go like this. So then they hand you the bait, and the bait is kind of hanging off, kind of like this. And the stingray comes up, and it's like this. But what happened was I got bit. When I did it, the thing bit my hand. So you can see here on the video, that mark that doesn't look like a teeth, their teeth are weird looking. I Googled it afterwards. So if you're interested, look up stingray teeth, and you'll see there's just like this weird crosshatch pattern. It's the weirdest thing ever. But that thing broke my skin a little bit. And I think I had an allergic reaction. I might be allergic to stingrays. I'm not sure. But that thing broke my skin and it hurt. It hurt for like an hour. And it wasn't like, oh, my thumb is broken, but it hurt. Like if I got my hand caught in something, because I got my hand caught in a stingray's mouth. And I got all sorts of videos you can see here. Me just sticking my iPhone underwater. Yes, an iPhone is water resistant. An iPhone is waterproof. You can stick your iPhone in your swimming pool without a special case on. You can stick it in the ocean. I've done it many times. You can stick it in the river. Now, there's always a chance that you're going to have one of those iPhones that are not perfect. We went down the Salt River, which is not salt. It's just called Salt River for some reason here. In Arizona, my wife's phone got destroyed. My phone was in my pocket when we all jumped off of our kayaks in the middle of the current. Fought like hell to stay alive, and my phone was fine. And so I'm pretty confident in taking my phone into the ocean. But to be clear, we had a travel phone, but the travel phone is an iPhone 15 Pro. So, it's very competent, but I didn't have a special case on it. So we ended up doing that. And we went from the stingray excursion, which is really cool. If you ever go to Cayman, if you ever get an opportunity to do a stingray excursion, don't think that you're going to be the crocodile guy and the freak thing happens where you get stabbed through the barb of the heart. That was a different type of stingray. These are more mild stingrays. And the chances of that happen are 1 in a trillion. Steve Irwin, right? Steve Irwin's the name? Yeah. After that, we went and did a snorkel excursion, which was the third. And that was fine. It wasn't great. It wasn't boring. We've snorkeled before on vacation. But one time when I came up, there's this kid screaming through the top of his lungs. And apparently one of the kids that were on the tour boat with us got hit by a jellyfish. Like this thing was all over him. It stung him, it stung his dad. And this poor kid couldn't have been more than like 9 years old. And he was hollering, saying that he was going to die. And it was awful. But They didn't tell us we needed to come back, but everybody kind of read the room or read the ocean, right? And kind of looked around. I was like, yeah, all right. Everybody kind of headed back to the boat. But that was the only paid excursion we went on. Everything else we decided to just kind of go along depending on what the day holds. So one of the other really cool things we did is we went to the Cayman Turtle Center. And the Turtle Center is kind of like a small zoo, and it's all about, guess it, turtles and lizards. And they also had a Cayman crocodile there, or alligator, crocodile, whatever. But it was weird when we went into the Turtle Center because the thing was empty. We went on Saturday, and I was thinking, gosh, I think it's going to be crawling with families and kids and just annoying people. But when you're on vacation, you just do it anyway. So I was prepared to go and have to deal with all the crowds and all the obnoxiousness and the noise. But there was almost nobody there. And so I asked the lady at the front about, hey, I mean, are you guys ever busy? Because this was Saturday. This was prime time. It was like Saturday at like 1. And she said, well, when the cruise ships come in, they're always busy because you could book that cruise excursion, I would imagine, because it's not like it was on the bay. It was probably 8 miles north. But when we went, it was just myself, Yvette. And I mean, there was probably, if you could have rounded up everybody at the Turtle Center that day, maybe 50. And that's not a lot of people. Again, this is, if you've been to Phoenix, this was about a quarter of the size of the zoo in Tempe. So it was a decent size for something dedicated to just turtles. What was cool is I think we paid $40 a piece to go in there, maybe $35. And it came with an option to go snorkeling with the turtles. And so, of course, we took advantage of all that stuff. We put the snorkel gear on, the life jackets that we had to wear, the mandatory. And they have kind of like this little lagoon that starts off like a beach. So you kind of get in the water, kind of slimy, kind of nasty. But when you get to the deep part, there's the sea turtles. So you can kind of swim with the turtles and the fish. Obviously, you're not allowed to touch them. But this video, of course, is with me, again, saying, screw it, I have an iPhone. I'm just going to take it and record under the water. And at any given time, I mean, you could be 3 feet away from a sea turtle. And they weren't very big. I think the biggest ones that we were snorkeling with might have been 2 feet shell, from shell to shell. But also in the Turtle Center, separated from us, they had giant turtles. Like these things were the size of my desk. Like these were the grown Ninja turtles. So I guess what you do there is you could sponsor and they release them to the wild. Not a lot to see there other than that. The turtles, there's birds. They have like a little bird center. Like who cares? I mean, honestly, I don't care about birds. Anytime I go to a zoo, they go, okay, you can go in here and look at all the cool birds. So what? I'm not here to see birds. I'm here to see like real animals. As you can see here, they're really known for their blue iguana. So here's a blue iguana, a giant blue iguana, and this other iguana. Yeah, they're not real. And then they had the turtle tanks in the back. They look like, imagine this. They look like a bunch of above ground swimming pools. And I don't know why these turtles were in that tank versus the ones that were kind of tripping over each other when we first came in, which is another larger tank. So maybe they separate them all by age. I guess that makes sense. And then I didn't take a picture of it, but they do have one Cayman crocodile. And apparently they're an endangered species. And this thing was sleeping. And I thought it was a bigger deal because on the schedule, it says crocodile feeding or alligator feeding, whatever the case, Wednesdays at like 11:30. So I'm like, this must be a big deal. Wednesday is 11:30. Maybe the cruise ships come in. Maybe the local schools do field trips here. But they literally had one alligator or crocodile. Again, I don't remember. I think one's freshwater, one's saltwater, whatever the case. But they only had one. Apparently they're an endangered species on Cayman, because you can get a Cayman alligator or crocodile. They're probably plentiful in other places, but on the island of Grand Cayman, there's not very many of them. They said that's super rare if you ever see them. Some of the other things we did is the last day we went to the Cayman Spirits Company. So they're known for making rum. So we did that tour, bought a couple bottles of rum at the duty-free shop. But there at his shop, I bought a bottle of this rum that was quite expensive, more than I usually spend on any bottles. But it's kind of one of those deals when you're on vacation and you see something cool and you know for a fact you can't get it in the States. And if you like that type of stuff, you should buy it. So I think we paid, I don't know, close to $300 for a bottle of rum. But it was cured in like French wine barrels, and it was pretty good. So I have it downstairs. Let's talk about the beaches. So the beaches, it's the Caribbean. There's almost no bad beach on the Caribbean. The thing about the Caribbean is if you haven't traveled, It depends on the time of year and what part of the island you're at. Because think about the currents, think about the way the wind blows, and think about all the seaweed, because there's seaweed. But some beaches you go to and there's not seaweed anywhere. Some parts of the beach you go to and there's nothing but seaweed. Like I think when we went to the Dominican, right behind the hotel, you could see the water, you could see the sand, but if you wanted to get to the water, you had to walk across probably 8 to 10 feet worth of seaweed that had just kind of gone up on the shore. But when you go to the other side of the island, there's not seaweed to be seen anywhere because of the way the currents are going. So fortunately for us, most of the beaches on the west end, which is the more condensed part of the island, beautiful beaches. Some of the beaches on the east end were were beautiful too, but they weren't as inhabited. Apparently Grand Cayman is known for scuba diving, which I don't scuba dive. My wife talks about wanting to scuba dive. I snorkel, barely, but I still enjoy really crisp and clear water. It's pretty amazing to look out, and all the dark spots is the plant life or the coral. And when you look into the water at any given time, you'll see like little sharks or you'll see stingrays, and you don't have to be anywhere a particular. Actually, the more wild area that you're at, the more stuff you're going to see just because there's not a lot of people there. But if you ever get an opportunity to go, I would suggest driving your car to the east end of the island and going up to like Starfish Point or whatever. And we stopped at a place, we're going to get to the food right now. We stopped at a place called Tukka, Tukka. There's a couple of locations on the island. We stopped at the one on the east side, and it was some of the best food we'd had the entire trip. Because the food in general was okay. The thing about Grand Cayman is they don't have like a specific cuisine. They have Cayman style. I still don't know what the hell that means. Maybe some pepper. One of the places we went to called Peppers, right across from the hotel, is a really popular place. The menu looked fantastic. The first night we got there, we were walking around looking at the menu, and we're like, wow, that looks really good. We're going to have to come here at some point. We ended up going there, and in my honest opinion, it felt like a big tourist trap. The food was okay. I ordered kind of the hot, like 3 pepper jerk barbecue ribs. And we're kind of spoiled here in the United States. We smoke everything, right? Like smoked ribs, there's nothing better. We get it, and it's barbecue-y, tangy. There's like no heat. There's like 0 heat. And Yvette ordered something there. It wasn't that good. And what we realized pretty quickly is the island doesn't have a specific flavor. Like you can go to Jamaica, which we haven't been to, but they have jerk, right? That's what they're known for. Jerk chicken, jerk fish, jerk whatever. There's a lot of jerk on the menus in Grand Cayman, but none of the jerk we ordered ever actually tasted like jerk. Like we've had real jerk food before, and it should blow your face off, and it didn't. So that's kind of disappointing. I went to a Tilly's, which is really popular there. We didn't have dinner there, but we were walking around one night, and we kind of stumbled across Tilly's and sat down and had a drink at the bar. Really cool place, really cool vibe. I would like to go back and go to Tilly's. We went to a place called Casa 43, which is a Mexican restaurant. Casa 43 had really good food, a ton of different tequilas. It was a tequila place. That's all they had was tequila because it's a tequila place. Really good food. Casa 43. We went and spent a lot of money at a place called Mayacones. So we met a guy named Darian the first night when we were walking around, and he's a bartender at a place. First off, the beer on the island, they have their own beer. Sucks. Okay. In my opinion, I've tried both their IPAs. I tried their light. I tried their regular beer. Not good. So, they have Cayman Beer Company or whatever. Not good. I think it sucks. So anyway, we were talking to Darius, and he's from Cuba. So he told us about Mayacones, which is it's kind of a fancy steak restaurant. So one night we went to Mayacones. Atmosphere was awesome. The food was really good. My steak was a little overcooked for the way I want it, but Yvette's was like butter. It was delicious. Spent a lot of money. Yep, spent a lot of money there. But the food at Mayacones, if you want to swing it, I think we paid maybe $350 for a meal between the two of us. We went to a place called Yoshi Sushi, and that was a traditional, you kind of sit in the floor style. Not on your knees, but they kind of cut away in the floor. So you kind of sit in the floor. And that was really good. Didn't break the bank, which was fantastic. Went to a place called Heritage Kitchen. The place, you could tell it's home cooking. You could tell it's very, very, very local. about as far as you can get from a tourist trap. You kind of have to wander off in a different part of the island and go between this skinny road, and you kind of go behind this other thing. And it's just like this little shack looking restaurant, the friendliest servers on the planet. And the food there was delicious too. And it, unlike some of the other places we went to, it didn't break the bank. Went to a place called Coconut Joe's, a garbage tourist trap, overrated. And even the food at the Marriott that we stayed at, the Marriott Resort, was actually pretty good. Some things were better than the other, but it was overall pretty good. If I were to give some final thoughts about the trip, first off, they have real grocery stores. Okay, they have a place called Foster's, and they have another place. Foster's is cool. So Foster's is like, I don't know if you've ever been to a Wegmans. Certainly you've been to a Whole Foods. So Foster's is kind of like a super Whole Foods is what I'm going to call it. Because Whole Foods isn't that big. But I've been to a Whole Foods in Fort Worth that was ginormous. So where they have a ton of different restaurants inside. They have the hot food, like the hotline, where you can go and it's like, I feel like it's not 24/7, but any time of day, if you go for lunch or breakfast, they probably have eggs out there. They have dinner items out there, and you get the food, and you go up to pay for it, and they charge you by the weight, and it's hot food. You know, it's a perfect place to go and have lunch. And that's why I said like Wegmans is kind of on the East Coast, and I used to go to Wegmans all the time when I worked in person on the East Coast. Next to Foster's, they had a thing called Blackbirds or Blackbeard's Liquor. I don't know. There's like 2 or 3 of them on the island. That place was cool too. But what I found inside Blackbeard's or Blackbirds or whatever we're calling it is they had all the Blantons, which you can't even walk in anywhere in the United States typically and find it unless it's a second or third hand store. And then they want like crazy prices for it. So if you want to buy Blantons in the United States and it's retail, you're going to pay anywhere from $74 to $89 typically. If you walk to a place and they have it, like secondhand stores, like some of the gas station stuff, they want like almost $300, $250, $300 for a bottle of Blantons. Like, get out of here. So it's kind of how it was there. But they had the Blantons from the barrel. They had the Blantons Gold. And sometimes you find regular Blantons. And of course, it costs more than it would cost here. But the fact that I'm looking at it in a liquor store and they have 3 or 4 of each one just blew my mind. One of the coolest things I saw was Fortaleza. So I don't know if you guys drink tequila. I drink tequila. I like Fortaleza. It's one of the best tequilas out there, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others. Very hard to find here in the United States. When you find it, you have to buy it or it's gone quickly. A lot of times, so if you're into bourbon and you go to these allocation things, you stand in line forever, and if you get there early enough, you get first pick. Fortaleza is usually one of those things that they throw in there with Eagle Rare, Elmer T, Weller 12, Weller Antique, and then there's always like a few other ones that are very expensive, and they only have a couple of them. So that what happens if you stand in line, you get inside, and it's like, all right, well, they don't have this, but they do have Weller and whatnot. Fortaleza is going to be one of the first things that people grab. And it's not expensive. I think it's like $65, $70 a bottle for like the Blanco, and it goes up from there. But you almost never see it in the United States when you walk into a store. In Blackbeard's, I'm going to call it Blackbeard's. That makes sense for a pirate. In Blackbeard's, they had 4 reposados and like 6 platas, which is the silver one. And I was mind blown. So I bought 2 bottles. I bought one for me and one for my good friend who always looks. He travels around everywhere. He travels to Mexico. He can never find it. So I hit him up. I say, hey, I got you. And the plan was like, all right, it costs about $100 USD. Going to bring it back. Maybe I just give it to him because I know he's good for it. He's giving me stuff. I've given him stuff. Maybe I tell him because sometimes I don't have any money. Hey, yeah, it's $100. You can have it for $100. I'm going to bring that full circle at the end of this story. So I bought that for him. I bought me a bottle. I killed it in like 3 days because I decided that I'm probably going to have to bring more rum, which I eventually bought that $300 bottle at the distillery place. So I needed the room. Yvette bought her Tito's. She paid about 2.5 times more for her Tito's there than she would normally get here. But, you know, when you travel, you have the water bottles and you just fill those with your mixed drinks. So you go to the store and you buy all your mixers, and that's what you walk around with all day on vacation. Save yourself a lot of money. We drove around with that. But the thing is, killing a bottle of liquor in 3 days between 2 people, actually, we each had our own bottle. Okay, so that seems like a lot of liquor, but it really isn't, because when you break it down, let's say you leave the hotel at 10:30, 11 in the morning, you go out and do whatever you're going to do. You don't get back till 5:36, 7 o'clock at night. Over the course of 3 days, you're barely drinking. So if anything, you're kind of wasting the alcohol because you never really get past the light buzz phase. And usually you don't even get to a light buzz because you're taking a drink out of it every probably 30 minutes, right? So that's like, I do one drink Wednesday with Wes Tankersley, and on a good one drink Wednesday, which takes about an hour, we have like 3 drinks. On a slow one, it's like 1.5 drinks. So think about the amount of alcohol you consume within an hour on one drink Wednesday versus what you would consume during the course of an entire day on the beach, right? So it's almost like wasting it. The liquor prices overall were a little high. That's not really the worst of it. The worst of it is the fact that the Cayman dollar and the US dollar aren't worth the same. So one US dollar is worth about 83 cents in Cayman dollars, and everything over there is in Cayman dollars. So technically, we're under them, we as in the United States. So everything there, if you go to the restaurant, you go to the bar, anything you buy other than at the grocery store comes with what's called a gratuity. So you think of a gratuity as when you are at the restaurant and you're ordering and it's like the server does a good job. You say, okay, well, if you sucked, maybe 15%, maybe 0. If you were barely breathing, 15, average is 18%. And if you really liked your server, you tip them 20%, typically 18 to 20%, right? Over there, when you look at your receipt, it's automatically 15% gratuity. So the first night when we were talking to Darian, the guy from Cuba, the bartender, I'm looking, I go, 15%, it's already on here. And he goes, yeah. I go, man, it's like you guys are screwing yourselves. Exchange rate. I go, yeah, in America, a good tip is like 18%, 18 to 20, because I tip bartenders really well. So I gave him a little extra money than his normal and whatnot. Full circle to the end of the trip, and we're looking at this point, everywhere we've gone to eat has this 15% gratuity tacked on. Sometimes they tack on 18% automatically. And it's not as if you have a party of like 8 to 10 people. It's just you and whoever you're with. Automatic 18%. But I figured, 15%, not bad, 18%, not bad. But then we get the hotel bill. And here's the thing. Okay, so on the hotel bill, and I have it here in front of me, that's why I keep looking down, they give you a gratuity charge on every night, a resort fee, which, of course, you get a resort fee. It wasn't an all-inclusive resort. It's just a resort fee, and an accommodation tax. So you have your room fee, your service charge, which is gratuities, your resort fee, and your accommodation tax. So I wrote this down, and this is how it all adds up, okay? So we're going to do this in Cayman dollars first. So one of our room nights was $500. I think we paid anywhere from $420 to $500 dollars a night for a room. Sounds like a lot because it kind of is. Not the worst. We're going to go to Turks and Caicos until we looked at the hotels. All of them were like $900 to $1,200 a night. Like, yeah, no, hard pass. So the room night was $500. Gratuity, $60. Resort fee, $50. Accommodation tax, $66. This was 676 Cayman dollars a night. A lot of money. You know what that is in USD according to the exchange rate right now? 810 US dollars a night. So we stayed here for 5 nights, maybe 6. I don't know what the math is. So when we got that hotel bill, we're kind of looking at each other like, holy shit. The hotel was nice. Wasn't that nice. But here's what we learned. And here's what I'm telling you if you ever go to Grand Cayman. This is one of the safest islands on the entire Caribbean, if not the safest island in the Caribbean. There is no major crime. There's no violent crime. There's not even sharks that kill people. Plenty of places to stay. If we were to go back, you could literally stay anywhere. You could stay at a $50, $100 a night hotel. You could stay at an Airbnb if you could find one for a decent price. Because when we travel, we like to stay at the main hotels because you feel like a little more comfort. You feel like they're a little more hospitable, and you're not familiar with the place. But if we were to go back, we could stay anywhere. We could still eat the same foods. We could still do the same excursions. And at the end of the day, we probably would have saved ourselves like $2,000. Easily $2,000. So finally, they always say to arrive at the airport 3 hours early when you're traveling international. And this is the second or third time in a row we've been burned on that. You get there 3 hours early and there was nobody working. The only people there 3 hours early are the other people who decided to actually get there 3 hours early. So you have this zigzag line of travelers who may or may not even be able to get into the computers to check their bags in. An hour and a half before the flight, or 30 to 45 minutes later, sometimes an hour later, then the actual airline staff shows up. So I won't tell you to not show up 3 hours early, but you might be better if you showed up 2 hours early, because otherwise you're going to be sitting there twiddling your thumbs. So what did I say about full circle with the Fortaleza? So today, my buddy and his wife showed up for their bottle of Fortaleza. So I took it out there to them. He was very appreciative of it. And he goes into his trunk, opens his trunk, pulls out a gun and shoots me with it. No. So he goes into his trunk, pulls out a trunk, has these 2 cool mugs for his business that he invests in, and go, hey, this is our business. This is our other venture partner. One for you and your wife. It's like, oh, cool. It's not no big deal. Here's a shirt that I got when I went to Acura. It's like, oh, cool. Here's a hat. I'm like, oh, you don't have to do this, dude. This is cool. He's all right, cool. Goes back into his trunk, pulls out his gun and shoots me. No, I'm just kidding. So he goes back into his trunk, pulls out this box, walks up with this box, and inside this box, there are 4 bottles of tequila and a bottle of champagne, all for me as a gift. He goes, okay, I got the G4 regular, I got the G4 high octane, I got the G4 Reposado, I got this other tequila, it's a Reposado. None of these have additives, or it's actually an añejo. None of them have additives. Hope you like it. Have you ever had this before? No, I haven't. Okay, I hope you like it. And here's a bottle of champagne whenever you and your wife want to celebrate. I'm like, dude, I literally got you 1 bottle of Fortaleza. You give me all this. And you know what he asked me? Hey, do we owe you anything for the Fortaleza? No, you do not. No, you do not. And that wraps up our trip to the Cayman Island. And I suggest if you have an opportunity to go, if you've gone on a cruise ship, 1 day is not good enough because you can't really go that far. But if you can handle it, go there for a day or 2. That's plenty of time to explore the island. And it's beautiful waters. Hey guys, I want to thank you for stopping by the podcast. If you like what you saw today, go ahead and hit that like button, hit subscribe, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. If you're streaming the audio, please consider subscribing and leaving a positive review. Believe it or not, that does help the algorithm tremendously. And if you're in a position to help the podcast upgrade, please consider joining the Patreon, patreon.com, hardparkingpodcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can get access to bonus audio as well as Patreon exclusive swag and free show swag. Also, special thanks to the main show sponsors, Right Honda, Right Toyota, Toyota of Huntington Beach, Claremont Toyota, and Gardenia Honda, Arcus Foundry, Autocannon, officially licensed Honda and Acura gear. Your support makes all the difference in this show. And if this is your first time checking this out, and if you truly enjoy this show, share it with the world, and I will talk to you all next week.
A beater.
Shut up!